Hey there, I'm Sandra and thank you for joining me on my channel Unmodern Living. This morning I'm in my garden picking green beans to get ready to blanch and freeze them so that we can eat them throughout the winter months. Green beans are probably one of the easiest things for you to start growing if you're interested in producing your own food. A simple package of beans off the seed rack is about $2 or $3, and it plants a whole row of beans that is way more beans than you can possibly eat at one time when they're all fresh. They're really very easy to blanch, and I'm going to be going into my kitchen in a little bit once these beans are all picked and chopped up and ready to go. And I'll be showing you how to blanch them as well so that you can preserve them for the winter months. I find the easiest way to pick green beans is to actually lift up the plants and look underneath, because they often have little green beans hiding on the underside. So when you get underneath here, you can see there's way more vegetables. It also is a good opportunity when you've got your plant lifted like this to pull any random weeds that might be coming up. Green beans, like I said, are an easy crop to grow. You definitely want to keep them weeded and hoed and make sure that you're watering them if needed. If you're not getting enough precipitation, you can see the sprinkler behind me here. We definitely have watered these because we had a few weeks that were really quite dry. And then all you really need to do is, like I said, weed them, hoe them, water them, and then they're ready to pick. When you're getting close to being ready to pick, you do want to keep an eye on them because they go from flower to vegetable very quickly and they grow really fast. So when you see them starting to get ready, you better set aside some time to pick them, because if you don't, they're going to get too big and hard, and then they're really not nice to eat at all. They get like a hard bean seed inside of them and they're just not nearly as enjoyable. So definitely, if you've got green beans, keep an eye on them because they go from flowers to ready to go in no time at all. Okay, so we've got all our beans picked in the garden, and oh my goodness, there was quite a harvest for a first picking. Definitely a good bunch of beans here. So when my kids were littler, they always would help me with this job. And so it was, instead of giving them a knife, I would just get them to just use their fingers and break the end off. I've never worried about the tails. I know that my mom always cut them off. I always called this the tip and this the tail. I don't know. I've never worried about cutting the tails off. So if you come to my house for dinner and we have green beans, you're probably going to get beans with tails, just because I don't see the point in cutting it off. There's nothing wrong with it. You don't even hardly know it's there. So that's all that I would get my kids to do. Now, if you want, you can certainly do them that way and blanch them whole. But I generally, just because, again, it's the way my mom taught me, is we call it schnibbling. We schnibble them up. So I generally cut them into 2s or 3s, depending on the bean. And sometimes it's quicker if you grab a whole handful and you take all the ends off at one time. And then you can just quick slice them into halves or thirds. And you end up with a bowl full of beans that are cut. Now these came straight out of the garden. They're not washed. I don't know why, I just have always done it this way. I generally tip them and cut them outside, and then I take them into the sink and rinse them before I blanch them. You could do it the other way. Some days if it's really hot and I don't want to be outside, I may take them inside to tip them and cut them up. But today it's a nice morning, the breeze is fantastic, so we're just going to work away at this outside on the porch, and then we'll go into the kitchen in a little bit to get ready to blanch. Okay, now that we've got our beans all schnibbled up and ready to roll, all I'm going to do is dump them into my sink, fill my sink with cold water to give them a nice little rinse. I'm not worried about there being any chemicals or anything on these beans. I've grown them myself. I know they haven't been sprayed with anything, but I do want to make sure that any little bit of dust or dirt from the garden gets rinsed off of them before I blanch them. So really all I do is I fill my sink with the beans and some cold water and give them a quick little bath. Okay, the other thing you're going to need to blanch your beans is a large pot to boil some water in. Now I've got 2 examples here of pots that are really ideal for this sort of thing. You can use any pot, but these definitely make it handier. Now this is actually a blanching pot that's designed for this purpose. I bought it at either Canadian Tire or Home Hardware, I don't remember which, and it's really just a strainer pot and very simple design, nothing fancy about it. It has a very light bottom. Where this is part of my set of pots and pans for the kitchen. It's got a real heavy bottom, but again, it's the same idea. I think it's actually called a pasta pot, but you can certainly use it for blanching as well. The point of either of these pots is that once your water is boiling, you add your beans to it to blanch them for just 2 minutes. And the other important part of it is you want to make sure you save that hot water so you can keep doing this whole process relatively quickly. You don't want to dump your hot water out every time and then have to reboil. It'll take you all afternoon to do your beans. So definitely find a pot that has a strainer. If you don't have one, what I did before I had either of these pots is I would use 2 pots. So I would boil my water in one pot, I would put my beans into blanch, and then I would strain my boiling water off into the other pot and just keep heating it up. So I didn't ever throw that hot water away. I just kept reusing it. And you can blanch beans in the same pot of hot water. I'm gonna actually do this whole sink of beans with 1 pot of hot water. Now I may have to add a bit of water if the levels go down, because certainly some of the water evaporates or goes away with the beans, whatever. But I don't dump out and restart over the whole process. Okay, so I've got my pot of water boiling and ready to go, and I'm just gonna put my blanching strainer in there. How many beans you add depends on how big this pot is. Now I just know, because I've done this same pot for years, that I do about a heaping cereal bowl full of beans. It's not exact science. And here's the most important part about this, is you'd only want to cook them for 2 minutes, okay? So figure out a way to have a timer, either on your watch, on your phone, whatever you need to do, but you really only want to blanch these guys for 2 minutes. If you cook them longer than that, they're going to get mushy and they're just not going to be nice to eat after you've frozen them. So we're just going to wait here for 2 minutes. Okay, once your 2 minutes are up, you want to get that lid off as quickly as you can and get them out of that water. Strain out as much, save as much as you possibly can into your pot so that you don't have to heat up more. And then you're going to get them to your sink right away. Okay, so as I mentioned before, you really do want to get these beans cooled off as quickly as possible so that they don't cook anymore, essentially. So it doesn't hurt to just run some cold water over them through the tap, and then you're going to drain out all the extra water and just let them sit for about maybe half an hour to an hour to let them finish draining out. But again, it's really that you got to make sure you get them cooled down as quickly as possible so that they will quit cooking, and then you can drain them and get them bagged up. Now, if you're buying bags of frozen beans at the grocery store, they're going to be individually frozen beans, which is kind of handy because you can take as many out of the bag as you need for a given meal and put the rest back in. I find that to be a lot of work in the home freezing process. In order to do that, you would essentially need to lay all of these beans out on cookie sheets as a single layer, freeze them, and then put them into Ziploc bags. Seems like a tremendous amount of work to me. So all I do is I instead portion them out as I freeze them, and I freeze enough in each bag for a meal for our family. So how many you put in your bag is really going to depend on how much you like a given kind of vegetable and how big your family is. I always label my bags with the year so that I can make sure that we eat the oldest produce first. So if I happen to have any 2019 bags in the freezer downstairs, the kids know to grab the oldest one when they go down to grab me some vegetables, and that way we, again, save the freshest produce for later. So all I do is I just simply put them in the bag, as many as I know that we're going to eat in a given meal, just like that. And I seal the Ziploc shut, try to get out any extra air as much as possible. And just like that, lickety split, we're good to go. So I'm just gonna finish bagging up these beans, pop them in my freezer, and they'll be great to eat all winter long. If you enjoyed my video today, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel. I'm gonna be doing more food preparation and preserving as the summer goes on and my garden starts to produce cucumbers and tomatoes and all those other great things. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything great. Thank you so much. Have a great day.